Hello everyone, myself is Dr. Avinash Amangi. I am from Gurudev Academy, Dharwad. We were discussing with respect to the chapter called as what evolution. Mainly synopsis part of it is Karnataka Common Entrance Test, right? So we left out with respect to the what this particularly theories of what biological evolution, where we started discussing regarding what this theory of what Lamarckism, theory of what majorly even it can be called as inheritance or acquired character, right? Darwin theory even called as what Darwinism or theory of what natural selection, right? Again mutation theory of what De Vries, right? So these all are what interlinked with each other, and based on what everyone's observation only they have framed this particularly what theories. So we will discuss regarding these aspects here, right? So majorly what this particularly Lamarckism or theory of inheritance of what acquired character is, it is actually proposed by whom? The Lamarck, right? And it states that evolution of what life form occurred by inheritance of what this particularly acquired character. Organism which will bring up something called as what change based on its need and based on its what the particularly adaptation, right? So it got what those character itself passed on to the what next generation. That is what we call it as inheritance of what acquired character, right? So Lamarckism basis, right? So here what he mean to see is here the acquired characters are developed by use and disuse of what organs. Now how these acquired characters are? Some of the organs we use it, some of the organ we actually want to disuse it. Whichever which we are not going to use, that is going to go, and which we use it, that is going to like what develop one after the another. Development can be seen one after the another, right? Then evolution by use of what organs here, what he is meant to say is, that is he given an example of what long neck of what giraffe is due to the what continuous elongation to forgage this particularly leaves on the particularly trees. So trees were with what height, and this particularly giraffe started what foraging this particularly leaves, and because of that only the neck development, see from here to here and here. So this acquired character was inherited. Now this whatever the character used by that particularly generation, that started what inheriting from what generation to generation, right? So because of that only we are seeing the changes. So here what it means, this acquired character was inherited succeeding what generations, understanding? Then evolution by what disuse, here what we call it as disappearance of what limbs in the particularly what snake before has what the particularly limbs, small limbs. These particularly snakes stopped using these particularly limbs, and later period what happened, snake became totally what the particularly without legs, right? So that what you are going to find out, evolution by means of disuse. This is what actually Lamarck has explained regarding this, right? Majorly what it matters here, this theory was eliminated out. This theory actually eliminated because it is proved that the characters are inherited only through the what genes. Later when the characters are what actually inherited through only what genes, because of that only this theory was what eliminated. And next like what aspects of what different theories has came into picture, right? Then who came here, the particularly Charles Darwin, Alfred Wellesley and Thomas Malthus, right, who actually started telling regarding what this theory of natural selection, right? What it means, actually it is theory of natural selection or Darwinism. What it says, it is actually proposed by means of what Charles Darwin, right? Then it was based on what observation during what the sea voyage in a sail of ship called as what HMS Beagle, right? Then again Alfred Wellesley, consider a naturalist, worked in Malay archipelago, right, had also come out to a similar conclusions. And even work of what Thomas Malthus on a population influenced Darwin, consider populations influenced Darwin. So those all steps, these started what actually sum upping the particularly what theory of this particularly theory of natural selection. Now what this theory of natural selection says here, majorly like what Darwinism is based on two key concepts. One is what? Branching descents. One is what? The branching descent, that is, it explains that all organisms are modified descendants of what? Previous life form. Right. So whatever the modified organisms we are seeing, it is actually came from the what? Previous life form. That is what we call it as branching descent, right? So there the modification, why what? Because of what? Adaptive character only, like what? The organism started what? Differing from each other with respect to the what? Characters, right? And it formed something called as what? Branching descent. Then next matters what? Natural selection. Right. Now what this natural selection says, consider a bacterial colony growing on a given medium, right? If the medium composition is changed, only a part of what population can survive under a new condition, and this variant population, this is known to be what? Variant population, outgrows the others and appears as a what? New species. That is what? B is better than what? A under a new condition, and thus natural selection for what? Fitness matters. Now what they have done, they brought up this particularly what? Bacterial colony, colony A, colony B, right? Now the particularly with respect to this media composition what they have taken, and based on that only, like what? First population A started growing, right? Then what they have done, they changed this particularly what? Medium. So change in the composition of medium, addition of what? Antibiotic they done. Now when antibiotic they have done, resistance bacteria outgrows, and the particularly who is not resistance, that is going to survive. Now the colony B is going to what? Survive, that is what? Red color colony, but the blue colored colony started getting what? Eliminated. So this says what? The theory of what? Natural selection. If natural conditions is good with respect to the what? Growth of this particularly organism, and the organism is going to be fit into that particular natural condition, then that itself is selected by means of what? Nature, and that is what we call it as natural selection, right? Then majorly, like theory of what this natural selection says, natural selection is based on the following facts. One is heritable minor variations, right? Heritable, and they have discussed only the minor variations. Over productions they included. Then limited natural resources related concepts what they have concluded. Then struggle for what? Existence matter here, because the organism is going to get adopt a character, and when it adopt, it is going to be what? Fit with respect to that environmental condition. Some of them are not going to adopt a character, they are not going to be fit with respect to that environmental condition, and they are going to get eliminated. So here matters what? Struggle for existence, and even survival of what? Fittest. So survival of what? The particularly fittest even matters. So these are the facts what actually natural selection theory is based on, right? So that is the particularly what? Darwinism, right? Again what it is overall we will discuss, heritable minor variations, right? That is, it is either a beneficial or harmful to the what? Organism, right? Minor changes with respect to the organism, either it is beneficial means it will survive, harmful means what? It is going to get what? Eliminate from the nature, right? Overproduction consider, so population size grows exponentially due to the what? Maximum reproduction. Example is what? Bacterial population. So population size grows exponentially due to the what? Maximum reproduction, and this is to be what? Carried out in favorable condition, and available type of what? Nutrition even matters. Then limited what? Natural resources. Now resources are not increased in what? Accordance with respect to the what? Population size, then definitely what? There will be what? The limitation can be what? Seen with respect to the natural resources, and there will be limitations with respect to the what? Selected type of what? Population. That what we are going to see. Then what matters? Struggle for existence even matters, right? So it is what? The competition among the organism you are going to find out for what? Resources, so that the population size is limited, right? Then you will find out what? Survival of the fittest. That is, in struggle for the existence, organism with what? Beneficial variations can utilize the resources better way, right? Hence they survive and they reproduce, right? This is called as what? Survival of the fittest, and it leads to the what? The particularly change in the population characteristics as well as what new form is going to get what appear over here. That is what it means with respect to the survival of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. Who are going to be fit into the what environmental conditions, they are going to survive, right? So that is what you are going to find out, survival of the fittest. Then mechanism of evolution consider mainly, which is with respect to the what mutation theory. Now whatever the theory is given by means of Lamarck and Darwinism, these are all sum upping things you are going to find out with respect to the mutation theory. That is, whatever the answers they have not given, those answers is actually brought by means of this particularly Hugo de Veris, which is actually proposed, known to be what mutation theory of what evolution, right? He conducted somewhat experiments on the what evening primos, right? Mainly we call it as Oniothera Lamarckiana, right? And believed that evolution takes place through the what mutation, not by what any minor variations, right? So what the particularly Darwin says, the minor variations, the actually the particularly evolution is going to take place by means of what? The mutation. Whatever the acquired character, change in the character, this is due to the what? Actually the mutation, genetic genes, due to the gene only, like what? The adaptive characters, what we are going to find out, right? Then there is something called as what? Darwin variations is what? Minor, slow and directional, right? So it is resulting in what? Gradual evolution. But the mutational variation consider is sudden, random and even what? Directionless. It can take place in anyhow, right? Here speciation is by the saltation. So speciation, right? Speciation is by means of what? Saltation, and saltation is nothing but single step large mutation with a limited period of time, sudden changes, single step and even large mutation you are going to find out, which result into what? This saltation. So which will form what? The speciation event too, right? So mutation is the origin of what? Variations for what? Evolution. So mutation, because of the mutation only what has happened, variation in the character can be what? Seen, and that itself is a significance for this particularly what? Evolution, right? So that is, we should remember here, right? Overally they mentioned with respect to the what? This particularly we'll start discussing whatever the theories majorly which is related to what? Lamarckism, then Darwinism and mutation theory. Now we'll go ahead with respect to the what? Hardy-Weinberg's principle, right? So based on that, here what matters is population ecology, right? That what we are going to find out, and population frequency even can be what? Calculated based on that, right? Now here majorly like what it says, that the allele frequencies in a populations are what? Stable and is constant from generation to generation in the absence of what? Disturbing factors, right? Now what he says, the particularly Hardy-Weinberg's principle, what it states, that allelic frequency in particular populations are going to be stable and is constant from what? Generation to generation, right? Without any what that is what? Without any kind of what? Disturbance, then only it is going to be constant from generation to generation. If there is a disturbance, then definitely what? It is this particularly what? The gene the frequency can what? Change, right? Now what he says here, the gene pool, that is nothing but what is gene pool? Total genes and their alleles in a population, and which remains a constant, and this is called as what? Genetic equilibrium. Gene pool is nothing but what? Total and total genes and their alleles in particular what? Population. In a population, total genes and alleles, right? That itself what we are going to call it as gene pool, and this gene pool remains a constant, right? And when it being constant, this is called as what? Genetic equilibrium, right? And that's what we call it as Hardy-Weinberg's equilibrium. So what it is? Sum total of what? All the allelic frequency is equal to what? 1, right? So that is what we are going to find out here. And then they have mentioned what? A population of what? 20 beetles. Each beetle is a gene pool, right? And their totality is the what? Gene pool of that particularly what? Population. Now what this allelic frequency refers? It refers to the what? How frequently a particular allele appears in a population. That itself what we call it as allelic frequency. How refers to what? How frequently a particular allele appears in a particular population. That itself what we call it as allelic frequency. So we'll see how it actually matters over here, right? So majorly what it is here with respect to the Hardy-Weinberg principle, consider in a diploid P and Q, right, are the frequencies of allele, right, which represents what A and the particularly what small a respectively, right. Now frequency of what AA, right, capital A, that is what we mention it as P square, right. Then frequency of what small a, which we represent it what the particularly Q square, right. So this is known to be the what homozygous condition or homozygous dominant, right. It is homozygous dominant and it is homozygous recessive, right. It is what homozygous recessive. So frequency of what the heterozygous, that is capital A small a, which he represented is 2pq, right. So heterozygous condition, right. So hence p square plus 2pq plus q square is equal to what, 1, right. This is known to be a binomial expansion of what, p plus q square, right. So p plus q square, or in mathematically binomial expansion is what, a plus b whole square. You are going to find out what, a square plus 2ab plus b square, right. So here that itself what he implemented, p plus q is known to be the what, one allelic type of what, consider in a diploid organism. P and q is the what, frequency of allele A and frequency of allele small a, right. That what you are going to find out. Then change of what frequency, majorly change of frequency of allele in a population disturbs the Hardy-Weinberg principle here, right. So change in the frequency of allele in a population disturbs what, Hardy-Weinberg's equilibrium, and this change is due to the what, evolution. So this changes you are going to find out what with respect to the what, evolution. So here whatever this total mentioned here. So here total number of what allele, what we have to consider is total number of allele A and capital A and small a. Capital A and small a is what, 40, right. Then definitely what we are finding out over here is A is equal to 26 and small a is equal to what, 14, as it is recessive, as it is what, a dominant one. Then what I am finding out, frequency of what A, if you consider, that is what, P, then P is equal to what, 26 divided by 40. So total is what, 40. Then what I am doing is 26 divided by 40 is what, 0.65. What it is, 0.65. Then the frequency of what, small a, that is Q I have considered. So 14 divided by 40, what I am finding out, 0.35. Then the total allelic frequency is what, this P plus Q, that is 0.65 plus 0.35. What I am going to find out is equal to 1, right. Now number of beetles if you consider, that is what, 20. Genotypes consider, capital A, capital E was what, 10 what they have given. Then capital A small a, what they have given, 6 they have given. Small a is given is what, 4. Then what I am finding out here, then frequency of genotype, how I am going to calculate. So total is what, 20. Then what I am finding out, 10 divided by 20, which gives me what, 0.5, right. Then the next one is frequency of what, heterozygous one, A, capital A small a, which is 6 divided by 20, which gives me what, 0.3, right. Then lastly what, frequency of genotype small a, that is what, 4 divided by 20, that is what, plus 0.2. So totally how much it is going to give me, 1, right. So that is what it means with respect to the what, Hardy-Weinberg's principle. So that is what you should remember. Calculation part, some of the questions what you are going to find out with respect to the Hardy-Weinberg's principle. So you should remember always that whatever the capital A or written, that will be a dominant one. Small letters what we are finding out, it is known to be the recessive one. Then small a, capital A, if you finding out like this, then I am going to call it as what, heterozygous form. So that here what you should remember, P is equal to what, P is homozygous dominant and Q is nothing but what, homozygous recessive one, right. So that is what you are going to find out, right. Then so here Hardy-Weinberg's principle is actually affected by means of so many factors here. So which are those factors? One is gene migration, that is what we call it as gene flow. Then genetic drift if you consider, then mutation, genetic recombination and natural selection. Based on this only, like what, the particularly factors affecting this particularly Hardy-Weinberg's principle. So one by one we will discuss here. The first one is known to be the word gene migration. Now what is gene migration or gene flow? It is the gene flow from one population to the another. So traveling consider, right? One geographical area to the what, next geographical area. So that is what you are going to find out. So here the gene frequency changes in both the what population, and gene flow occurs if migration happens multiple times, right? So gene flow when migration happens multiple times. So one like here one bird traveled from this location to what, this location, then here what happened, overall the population is got what, changed, right? So the particularly gene flow, right, or genetic frequency or allelic frequency is got what, changed. So matters here. So how many times migration happens, like that only, like what, the gene flow can occur. So that is what we call it as, and it affects something called as what, this genetic equilibrium, right? Then something called as what, genetic drift here. So overall what this genetic drift is, the gene flow by chance consider causing change in the frequencies. Gene flow by chance if it occurred, it causes what, change in the frequency. Sometimes change in the frequency is so different in the what, new sample of what population, that they became a different species, right? Now what will happen, one species was there and suddenly like what, that particular species itself changed its character, and due to that it became what, a different species, right? And that the original drifted population becomes what, founder. Original population was there but suddenly character changed, so that is going to be what, founder, and the effect is called as what, founder effect, right? So this is what you should remember here. So change in the frequency is so different into the what, new sample of what population, right? And that is because of what, a different because that they become a different species. So you consider color basis one, right? So different changes what you are going to find out. The original drifted population becomes what, founder, and the particularly effect is known to be the founder effect. So original population was itself is a founder one, right? So that effect is what we are going to call it as founder effect. Then there is a mutation, majorly like what, it result into the formation of what, a new phenotype. Now genotype means what, the genetic makeup, the genes which are present inside our DNA, that itself due to the what, mutation formed a new phenotype, right? So new phenotypes can be what, be seen. So over few generation, and this leads to the what, speciation. Consider a mutation, if it go on continuously taking place, then definitely it is going to lead into the what, a new species formation, like how we got evolved from the monkeys to the human being, right? That is due to the what, actually the mutation, right? Then there is something called as what, genetic recombination. This is what even matters, which will bring up something called as what, even a non-parental combinations, right? So here it is the what, reshuffling of what, genes, gene combination during the what, crossing over, resulting into the what, genetic variations. And these genetic variations majorly can be seen up with respect to the what, meiosis, right? With respect to the meiosis only we are going to find out such kind of what, recombination character. So as you know, with respect to the what, majorly patchotin, the crossing over is going to take place, and with respect to the diplotin, what we are going to find out, there is something called as what, recombination character. Then what matters, natural selection. Nature should select that particular species. So here what, three types of what, natural selection. One is stabilizing selection, directional selection, and disruptive what, selection. This is what the graphical representation of what you are going to find out. Stabilized population you can find out, nature will select. Then particularly directional selection you are going to find out, right? Then disruptive what, the particularly selection what we are going to find out, right? Then there is something called as what, natural selection. Here what, more individuals acquire mean characters value, and variation is what, reduced. So variations you are not going to find out. So more individual acquire mean character value, it acquires what, mean character value, and variations you are not going to find out. So here you consider phenotype favor by what, natural selection. then medium sized individuals are what favored over here. So that is what you can find out, so graphically. Then peak gets what higher and narrower. First it will become what higher, then it will become what the particular narrower even, right? So size wise what you are going to find out, right? That is what we call it as stabilizing selection. Then there is something called as directional selection. Individuals of what one extreme, that is value other than the what mean character value, are what more favored. So here with respect to the what the peak shift is what one direction only you are going to find out. Stagnancy can be what seen with respect to the what directional selection, right? Then what matters, disruptive selections, right? Disruptive selections here, individuals of both extremes, that is peripheral one character value at what both ends of the what disturbance curve you are going to find out are actually what favored. So consider change. This is what number of individual with a phenotype, that what you are going to find out. Later period if you find out the peaks variations, you can find out that two peaks formation is going to take place with respect to the what population, and it depends on the selection of what nature. So overall what you are going to find out, the natural selection basis. The fur color of what rat they have mentioned, so rat color basis like what we are finding out white, black. Likewise we can compare the characters and we can see how stabilizing this one is, how directional this one is, how disruptive it is, right? So that is what matter with respect to the what theory of natural selection, right? Now we'll discuss about what a brief account of what this particularly evolution. So one by one we'll go on discussing ahead with respect to this, right? Majorly like what geological time scales includes what 4 eras, that is nothing but Proterozoic, then Paleozoic and Mesozoic and the particularly Cenozoic, right? So these are the what 4 eras what we should remember with respect to the what geological time span. Then here if you consider majorly Proterozoic era, that is what with respect to the what 2500 million years ago to what 541 million years ago. The first cellular form of what life appeared with respect to what 2000 million years ago, right? Then here some of the what cells had the ability to release oxygen as the what light reaction in the what photosynthesis you are going to find out. Some of the organisms or majorly some of the cell has a capacity that what it is actually released something called as what oxygen after carrying out what photosynthesis. Here you will find out what single celled organisms became what multicellular organisms later, that they started what interacting with each other and they became what multicellular form of what organisms. So each cell started contacting each other, right? So that is what you are going to find out. Then it has what actually Paleozoic era, you will find out what 6 periods here. One is Cambrian period, that is 542 what 490 millions, right? Ordovician period, that is 492 443 million years. Then Silurian you find out 425 million years. Devonian if you find out 405, right? Then Carboniferous you can find out 630 million years. Then Permian you can find out what 285 million years ago, right? So that is what you are going to find out majorly Paleozoic era, right? So that what you should remember here, right? Then you consider what it says 500 million years the invertebrates were formed, right? Invertebrates started what getting developing. 450 million years first land organisms majorly like what plant appeared over, right? So this is a primitive plants what you are going to find out. This is the particularly pterygobites what you are going to find out, that actually invertebrates were actually formed, right? So that is what you can find out, right? Majorly again Paleozoic era basis what you are finding out over here, the 400 million years arthropods invaded the particularly land, arthropod development started taking place. Then what we are finding out 350 million years the particularly jawless fishes are very evolved. So this is what jawless fishes you are going to find out. So like that of what appearance of what this organism began, right? Then 500 million years majorly 350 million years ago jawless fishes were evolved with respect to that lobe fins. Lobe fins, what you are going to find out, whatever this fins development started, that is short and strong finned fishes, right, and could move on to the what land and go back to the water again, and they evolved to the what first amphibians, that is what we call it as ancestors of what modern day frog and as well as what salamander, right. So that is what you are going to find out, they started evolving slowly, right. Then you consider the majorly like what fossils which are of what the particularly coelacanthus, lobe fin fish, and that is what you are going to find out the diagrammatically what it shows here, right. Then majorly like Paleozoic era, what you are finding out in 1938, a lobe fin called as what the particularly coelacanthus fish was caught in particularly what South America, and which was thought to be what extinct. They thought it is being what extinct, but they got this particular type of fish, and that the 325 million years ago old this is, like what majorly like old one means the particularly generations you are going to find out, and it is an one ancestors, right. So lobe fin of what coelacanthus is what still very much alive, still it is there, right, the lobe fin fish what we are finding out, right. Then there is something called as what in 1938 was what caught in South America, that is what the images what you are going to find out, which is thought to be what extinct, right. Then overally you can find out over that majorly the diagrams of this particular lobe fin fish, early fin fish was like, then Estiostasia what you are going to find out, the development of frogs and salamander, from this particularly organism you are going to find out evolutionary changes can be what seen, right. Then there was like what the particularly 320 million years ago the seaweeds and the few plants were existed, right. Then amphibians evolved to what reptiles, and they lay thick shelled what eggs, they do not dry up in the sun, right. Then giant ferns development, that is what pteridophytes were actually present, but they all fell to form the particularly coal deposits slowly, right. So coal deposits and even whatever this animal basis the changes, majorly their amphibians evolved what reptiles, and they lay something called as what thick shelled egg, they do not dry up into the what sun, right. So that all things what you are going to find out. Then there is giant fern development, right. So that is actually found out, right. Then age of what reptiles and gymnosperm, if you consider, it has 3 periods with respect to the word gymnosperm and reptile, that is what we call it as Triassic period, that is 230 million years ago, Jurassic period, that is 208 million years ago, then Cretaceous, which is 144 million years ago. That is developmental wise what we are going to find out, right. Here 200 million years ago, that is what Mesozoic era started. So some of the particularly land reptiles went back into the water to evolve into the fish like reptiles, that is what we call it as Estiosaurus, right. So that is what which are actually resembles of what little bit dinosaur like what structures you are going to find out. Then the particularly after the particularly Estiosaurus, the land reptiles were what dinosaurs, right, or even what we call it as mainly Tyrannosaurus rex, right. Then Triceratops, right. Likewise the particularly what organisms what you are going to find out here, what they have given an example of what Tyrannosaurus rex what you are going to find out. So overall the developmental aspects, right, change with respect to the what these particularly organisms which were water to back they became the what reptiles, from the reptile they started what being into the what terrestrial form of what environmental conditions, right. Then the majorly like what this is Triceratops, right, that is what you are going to find out, right, images of this particularly. Then Stegosaurus, right, that is what you the structurally how it looks like, right. So it is one kind of what dinosaurs only, right. Then they have mentioned something called as what long-necked dinosaurs, that is nothing but a Brachiosaurus, right. So that is what you are going to find out, right? Then there was like what this T-Rex was the particularly largest dinosaurs, that is around what 20 feet in height and huge, fair somewhat draggers like what teeth even, right? Then toothed birds were what emerged from it, right? So like that of what actually evolution started taking place. It was totally what heavy dinosaurs what you are going to find out, right? Then there was something called as what this Cenozoic era, right? Mesozoic era, later period what you are finding out this Cenozoic era, where the age of what actually mammals and angiosperms, right? It has again two periods here. One is territory, which is of what 66 million years ago. Then quaternary, that is nothing but what 2 million years ago. That is what age of the man what we are going to find out over here. So overall development with respect to organisms, right? Then in Cenozoic era they mentioned it as what dinosaurs suddenly disappeared, and some says what climatic changes killed them, but some says most of them what evolved into the birds, they itself started got evolving. Some says what due to the climatic conditions only like what these dinosaurs became and what extinct, right? So likewise the particularly some says what some these dinosaurs got evolved into the birds, right? Then you consider what dinosaurs suddenly disappeared. Some says what due to the climatic change it killed them, and some says what most of them evolved into the birds. First mammals were what shrew-like, and their fossils are what small sized. What we are going to find out the mammal type of a development, small type of what fossils even they have found out in this particularly Cenozoic era, right? Then there is what you can find out in South America. There were what mammals resembling what horse, hippopotamus, bear, and this particular rabbit. And due to what the continental drift, when particularly South America joined with North America, these animals were overridden by the particularly what North American fauna, right? Now with respect to the fauna, the changes started taking place, the communication between what this particularly continental, and it lead into the what continental drift. Some of the population started traveling here and there with respect to one geographical area to the next geographical area, and which lead into the what change with respect to their genetic constitution too, right? Then you will find out what due to the what continental drift, Australian marsupials survived, and because of the what lack of this particularly competition from any other mammals, right? Only who survived with respect to the continental drift, Australian marsupials, that what you are going to find out, right? So overally this is a diagrammatic view or how the actually changes and the periods what they have mentioned here, the quaternary, tertiary, Cretaceous, Jurassic, Triaceous, Permian, and the Carboniferous, right? Like that of what the development what you are going to find out overally. With respect to the plant also they mentioned Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic type of one. So overally the development how it took place diagrammatically what they have shown, and this diagram is there into the what the particularly NCERT, right? Now we'll start with respect to the what how actually human being got evolved, that is what origin and evolution of this particularly man. As we know human is got evolved from this particularly monkey, from the apes to the what human being, that we will discuss over here, right? So origin and evolution of man if you consider, that is what the particularly first one known to be the Dryopithecus and the Ramapithecus, right? So which is of what 15 million years ago, they were hairy, walked like what gorillas and chimpanzees. Then Dryopithecus, which more like what ape like, and Ramapithecus more like what man like, right? Variations you can find out. So Dryopithecus, which were actually like a monkey itself, then Ramapithecus, which shows some similarity with respect to the what man. So they known to be what man like structures, man like organisms. Then overally like 3.4 million years ago there were a man like what primates in the eastern Africa, and they had a what height up to the what 4 feet and walked upright, right? And this beliefs is based on the what fossils like what man like bone like found in the particularly Ethiopia and Tanzania, right? So like that of what the development what you are going to find out, the height they were first what 4 feet and they walked up what with respect to the right, upright, what you are going to find out. So development wise, even skull wise development, right? So Australopithecus, if you find out here, it is what 2 million years ago lived in what East African grassland, and hunted with respect to the what stone and weapons, and what ate particularly what fruit. They started eating what even fruit, and started what hunting even with respect to the what stones, right? Weapon was what actually stone. Then Homo habilis you consider actually what little bit developed type of what the man you consider. 2 million years ago, first human like what being was what hominid, right? Brain capacity considers 650 to 800 cc, and did not eat meat. It stopped what eating meat, like what only it started eating something called as so the particularly fruits, vegetables. So 650 to 800 cc is a capacity of what brain of this Homo habilis. This you should remember, right? Then the particularly Homo erectus came into the picture, that is around 1.5 million years ago, and brain capacity was 900 cc, ate what the particularly meat here, right? So he started eating the meat, that is what Homo erectus, right? So that what you are going to find out developmental aspect, right? So you should remember the brain capacity too, that is what 900 cc, right? Then the particularly Homo neanderthalens, or what we call it as Neanderthal man, right? Neanderthalensis, or even we call it as Neanderthal man, which is of what 1 lakh to 440,000 years ago, and brain capacity was around what 1400 cc. Lived with respect to the what East and the particularly Central Asia, and used what hides to the what protect their bodies, right? They started what using the cloths here, buried their what dead ones, that what you are going to find out. So the development you consider like what which looks like what to little what man like structures, right? Similarities you can see. Then there was overall development was what the Homo sapien, what we are known to be what modern man. So which been developed during what 75,000 to 10,000 years ago, that is known to be the what ice age of this particularly man. So prehistoric cave art developed about what 18,000 years ago. So they started what drawing, and they started what the onto the what caves, what you are going to find out. So like the particularly literacy started being over. Then they started what agricultural human settlement started taking place 1000 years ago, sorry 10,000 years ago. That is what the development with respect to this modern man. So sequence of what human evolution you can find out orally. First one is Dryopithecus, then Ramapithecus, then Australopithecus, then Homo habilis, then Homo erectus, then Homo neanderthalensis, and the or Neanderthal man, what we are going to call it as. Lastly is what the Homo sapien. Likewise the development what you are going to find out with respect to this evolutionary point. Then mainly like what origin and evolution of a man, hominid families, orally this what development, skull variations, developmental brain development basis, the variations even with respect to the skull can be seen over here, right? Then origin mainly like what comparison of the skull, even if you consider first one is known to be the adult modern human being skull, right? Second one is known to be a baby chimpanzee skull, and the adult chimpanzee skulls. You will find out what this little bit similarities with respect to the what even skulls too. And the skull of what a baby chimpanzee is more like what adult human skull than the what adult chimpanzee skull. So you can find out baby chimpanzee skull and the particularly adult man skull is what similar, right? So only what we call it as we are actually evolved from this particularly what monkey to the what human beings, or chimpanzee to the human beings, apes to the what human beings. Here you should remember the particularly brain capacity even with respect to these particularly organisms. So thank you so much, and even like, subscribe our channel, like and share our channel too. So thank you. Please do listen this particularly evolutionary evolution chapter, which is even important, carries what 1 or 2 marks with respect to the what KCET. Thank you.